Thank you. The one piece that Beth didn't mention is that we were out in the bar as well, so it was an early start and it was a great end to the evening. So I do want to thank you all for joining me, because I believe time is the most valuable resource that we possess, and many of us exchange our time for a paycheck in order to do the things that we want to do. And so as Beth mentioned, I'm here for my second book. My first book was You Only Live Once, and you can tell that's YOLO. You know, for my generation, I'm an older millennial, it's like shots at the bar, mindless spending sprees, but it was about time being the most valuable resource that we possess, and how can we utilize our time to really have a meaningful and purposeful life. And I understand when we're struggling financially, when we're having financial issues, both personally and in our business, it's very difficult to do the things that we want to do, or we need to do, or we love doing. And so for me, breaking the taboo about money is vital and essential, because most of us are already, all of us are already having conversations about money with the clothes we wear, the cars we drive, the homes we live in, and also the photos and videos we share on Instagram and TikTok. And so for me, it was important to go across the country to turn local money discussions into a national conversation on financial well-being. And for those of you who've never heard of the term financial wellness or financial well-being, I've been promoting this for over 10, 12 years. And when I started, everyone looked at me like I had 10 heads, because like, wellness, money, how does that interact? And financial wellness is really about your health, your wealth, and your overall quality of the life that you're living. So it's not just about financial goals, it's about your life goals. And for all of you who are entrepreneurs, small business owners, I know how vital it is to take care of yourself in order for you to be present in your business. I have spoken with a lot of people across the country, entrepreneurs and business owners, and many of them are struggling mentally, emotionally, and even physically, and wondering, how can I sustain my business when I'm mentally struggling, which is affecting how I'm connecting with my clients, thus affecting the financials of my business. And so I want to center this discussion on that. But if we go further, I think it's really important to give you an idea and give you a bit more background of who I am and why I love talking to other entrepreneurs. So as Beth mentioned, I am an accidental entrepreneur. I never thought I would ever own a business, start a business, and eventually I've started numerous businesses. Some have failed, some have been extremely successful, and as you've noticed in one of the lists, I also had an opportunity to sell a business that I started in 1 year for $3 million, and I thought I had this big, bold idea, I was gonna change the world, and said no, and then that business shut down. And so one of the key things and key lessons that I've learned is something that I'll go over on this little short talk, but I really want this to be informal, so if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to raise your hand, and I'll be more than happy to kind of drill in this discussion. But to give you a background on why I talk about money and why I talk about financial wellness, it's because I never had the conversation about money with my parents. The first conversation I had was when I was 17, when they sat me down and said, we can't afford to send you to school. I was devastated because I thought I did all the right things. Go to school, get good grades, played sports, did drama, community service, and I thought I was gonna be set to go to school, graduate, get a degree, and then get that job. Well, that devastating news led me to working at Newark Airport. So I was cleaning toilets, serving drinks in order to save enough money to afford the first year's tuition. So as my friends were going to college, I was working and getting a paycheck, and I thought to be an adult, I needed a debit card. I needed a way to use this money. So I ran to the bank around the corner, got myself a debit card, swipe, 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 pin, pin, pin. What do you think I did with all my money? I spent it all. And I paid more in non-sufficient fund fees than I ever had in the savings account. And so one of the key things that I learned was like, wow, my lack of financial knowledge, the lack of never having the money conversation was impacting my relationship with money. And so for me, I am not the person that goes across the country giving budgeting workshops or credit score improvement programs. I like talking about your hopes, your dreams, your thoughts and feelings. And why does that align with small business owners and entrepreneurs? Because all of you have hopes and dreams. All of you are striving for something so much more. All of you are hoping you can solve a problem that a customer or client has. But what tends to trip us up is our relationship with money. I've met entrepreneurs who can't ask for their worth. They're unable to have the conversation with a potential client about the money that they want to make. And then I have those who are so passionate about their business, about what the product that they've created, that they're not thinking about the sustainability of that business. They're not thinking about the financial wellness of themselves. So I have business owners that say, oh, all the money that I make is going to be used to grow this business. Then when I have that one-on-one conversation with them, they're telling me they can't pay their credit cards. They can't pay their utility bills, and they're struggling. And one of the biggest issues here is understanding that we need to take care of ourselves. We need to become financially well in order to do the work, in order to reach those goals that we set for ourselves in our business. And one of the key things too, when I wrote the book, Happy Money, Happy Life, I wanted the people to understand that you are more than just money. You're so much more. There are 8 dimensions. You are multidimensional. There's your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, social, occupational, environmental, and financial well-being. And money weaves itself into these dimensions. And we need to learn how to use money as a tool to impact our mental health, our emotional well-being, our physical capabilities, our spiritual development, our social connections. Because money does affect those things. Money weaves itself. It's something, it's like whether you agree with me or not, money impacts everything. And so for me, it's important as entrepreneurs, as small business owners, is to understand your relationship with money. What is it? Because your thoughts, your feelings impact how you use money, how you save, invest, how you spend. And in addition, it's going to impact how you operate your business. Sure enough, you're investing all your money, all your income, your revenue back into the business, helping it grow. But if you're not taking care of yourself, there is a good chance it's not going to go pretty far. I've met a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the big hustle and grind. How many of you like the hustle and grind, right? If you're sleeping, you don't love your dream enough. You're not working hard enough. I fell for this. It's like grind and hustle myself to the bone because believe in my mission and everything will click and then the money will start pouring in and I get to live my life outside of the business the way I had envisioned it. But when we are grinding, when we are hustling, guess what happens? Gears that grind for too long get worn out and then you're thrown out. So I don't want you to grind yourself to the bone, to the point that you can't serve your purpose, to the point that you can't build a business that's here long term. So my message for you today is I want you to take care of yourself. And I created a system in this book. I didn't build this 8 wellness dimensions. It's been around since the 60s. But I built this system around money for you to understand how money weaves itself and what you can do to use money as a tool to impact those dimensions. I wanted to write this book back in 2016 after the success of my first book. And the publisher said, oh, you think money's taboo? You can't talk about mental health, emotional well-being. Well, we've all gone through something very traumatic, something very impactful in our lives. And what I've learned now is that people are more willing and more able to share their mental struggles, their emotional health. And so for me, it was really important to have this conversation to let you know we all are going through something. And as entrepreneurs, and I have a path forward. And one of the key things too, for us entrepreneurs, for us small business owners, and I've met, you'll work 60, 70-hour days, weeks. And one of the key things too is that we wear down our body. As I mentioned, the gears that grind get worn out and thrown out. I've met a lot of people who don't take care of themselves. They're not spending on the things that make them happy, that fill them up with joy. They're so focused on that business growth and they're hustling and grinding and it's wearing down their body, their physical health, that all the money that you've made in your business gets spent on prescriptions you can't pronounce and medical visits. So I want you to know that there is a balance. And I've met, and so I am someone from Jersey who moved out to California. I started my career as a teller at a credit union, became VP of Marketing and Business Development in 3.5 years. I grew that company from 60 to 120 million in less than 3 years. And I was selected as successor CEO at the age of 28. And when my boss sat me down, she said, hey, guess what? We're gonna make you the successor CEO when I retire. I had a reaction, a visceral reaction. I said, I quit, I resigned. So instead of taking that role, I ended up quitting my corporate job, and I found myself backpacking around the world. I went through 20 countries in 12 months, Southeast Asia, Central America, Western Europe. That's when I was having all these conversations with people telling me, wow, you're lucky, you're American, the land of opportunity, the streets are paved with gold. So when you have these conversations all around the country, even though knowing that whether you're making $40,000 a year here or $100,000, people are struggling. There are so many issues. And so what I've learned is that we do have opportunities, and you are a business owner, you are an entrepreneur or a wantrepreneur. You are these things because you know that there are opportunities here. And so my job is to work with organizations, to work with credit unions, to let them know what can they do to support you locally. And not just on, we have credit cards and banking products, but what can we do to elevate your growth? What can we do to help your business grow, but also ensure that your well-being is at the center and focus of your business? And so with that said, I mean, I'd like for you to start thinking about your questions. But one of the key things that I do want to also share is that when I started, and I'm not sure many of you, and I was pitching to a lot of VCs in California and Silicon Valley, and I was mentioning earlier, moving out to Palo Alto. So I lived in Palo Alto, had an apartment, and I always laughed because around 2010, 11, I was like, oh yeah, you know, block away was Mark Zuckerberg's house, and I lived down on University Avenue, and it was a really great experience. Someone coming from Jersey, going into this Silicon Valley tech hub, I would sit at a bar, and I would have conversations with entrepreneurs who would tell me, oh yeah, I just sold an algorithm for a couple $1 million. I'm like, that is awesome. Well, how long did it take you to, to start your business? 2 months. And then that's how I got introduced to this entrepreneurial tech world. Then I started meeting founders of many of the apps that you see. I started and became friends with the founder of Gmail and things like that. So then I started going into this ecosystem. And then I started realizing that there were certain things that they would say. It's like, listen, when we're investing on someone, yeah, we don't simply invest on the idea, we invest on the individual. We invest in terms of like, no, are they really taking care of themselves? We want them to work hard because we want our money. But are you really taking care of yourself? How are you doing? And those are the things that I was learning that you normally typically don't hear, because it's all about the hustle, the grind, and getting the exit strategy piece of it. And so again, it is important for us. It is so vital when you're building your business that you are taking care of yourself, that you're paying yourself first. So that was a key mistake that I made when I started my business. We were doing really well, and I said, I don't need to take a salary. Well, you need to take a salary because it needs to be part of your financial growth plans. So many entrepreneurs that I speak with, it's like, oh yeah, it's like I'll take a salary a year or 2 years from now. Well, you need your financial numbers, your revenue goals to include the salary that you'd like to make. You don't want to pay yourself too much, but you need to pay yourself something so you can pay for the necessities, you can pay for the things that allow you to focus on your business. And again, I want to thank you. So if you have any questions, any comments, if there's anything, Beth, that I missed. The 8 wellness dimensions: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, occupational, environmental, social, and financial. That's a concept that was started back in the 60s with a number of psychologists who says you are more than just one thing. And when you're trying to figure out, wow, you know what, I'm mentally strong, I'm physically healthy, like, why do I feel like there's something missing? And me understanding and learning that, yes, I can have my business, happy work, occupational well-being, great. I can have my finances in order, and then I can be mentally strong, physically well, but then something's missing. Like, what is it? And then you don't feel happy. You don't feel joy. Understanding and knowing the 8 wellness dimensions, you can identify the areas to say, you know what's missing in my life are the social connections. I've sacrificed so much of my time in my business. I've lost friends. I missed out on time with my family, and that's affecting me. So what can I do in order to spend more time with my family and friends while still taking care of my business? And so that is how these things interact. So the wellness dimensions are interconnected, they're overlapping. When one dimension is suffering, it will have a ripple effect on other dimensions. But all of us have dimensions that are strong, that are our key strengths. And what we need to do is lean into that dimension in order to strengthen the dimension that is weak. And so when you're looking at your social, like I've met people who have financial challenges, but they have a very healthy social network. And they're like, I don't know where to start. It's like my money is suffering, my business is suffering, so I'm unhappy at work. Well, you have friends, you have a healthy network. Lean into that, devote time and energy, and guess what? Opportunities will open where there might be a business venture, there might be a new job, there might be an opportunity to do something else to help you on other dimensions. And what I learned reading all the research on multidimensionality of individuals is that money wasn't really talked a lot about. And as I was reading other money books and things like that, I knew that everything that they were talking about in those books were pointed at these dimensions. And so this book specifically shows you how money weaves itself into your mental, your emotional, your physical, your spiritual well-being. Because money isn't everything, but it impacts most things. And when we understand what it impacts, we can then utilize money as that tool in order to improve ourselves. So for instance, okay, so how does money improve my mental health? I've already given you that example. Increase your knowledge, go to networking events, take workshops, listen to podcasts, things that allow your mind to grow. Well, how do you improve your emotional health? Well, learning about emotional intelligence, about how you perceive your emotion, how you manage it, and how you express it to others. That's another learning growth opportunity. How do you improve your physical wellness, your body? Well, it's okay to pay for a trainer. It's okay to pay for a course that gets you to move, that gets you to do the things that's gonna make you healthy. And I like to tell everyone, I'm like, you know what? If you love to sleep and you like a nice bed, it's okay to spend good money for a bed where you're gonna sleep in for a good amount of time. Because then I'll meet people who'll say, oh yeah, I cheap out on my bed because, you know, it's just a bed. But like, you wake up feeling achy, unproductive. Well, those are the things like shifting and how money, and then when you talk about the spiritual dimension, happy spirit, how does money weave itself into that? It's about charity. It's about giving. And so I talk in the book, this process that I do every day, I call it yaga, which is intention, affirmation, gratitude, and appreciation. And that's how, like in the state that I'm in, when I became financially independent, I'm living financially free, and I've said this multiple times, I get to pick and choose the work I do, the people I work with, and when I get to work. It's a great life, but sometimes it is missing things. And that missing piece was this happy spirit dimension, the connection to something greater. And so when you are an entrepreneur, you kind of tend to think, oh yeah, I'm connected to my purpose because I'm serving something. But that's why when I go to towns and part of my tour going around across the country, the 50 states, it's just having these connections, having these conversations. It's my way of giving back. It's my way of charity to share my knowledge, my experience in hopes that one of you, maybe many of you, will take something away that can change the trajectory of your life. Because I tell everyone that I meet, whatever work that you do, whatever job that you're in, whatever business that you're working on, we want you here for the long term, not the short term. And understanding the wellness dimensions and understanding how money weaves itself in these wellness dimensions is going to empower you to be here for the long term. And not just for the long term, but it's going to empower you to enjoy the moment, to truly immerse yourself in the process. Because I've learned at the end of the day, it's never about the achievements. It's about the sense of fulfillment. And the sense of fulfillment only truly happens when we are present through the experience. So I tell everyone, I think I shared it in this book, or it might have been edited out. I was like, I imagine myself when I'm older, I'm sitting in a rocking chair, staring at a mountain and going, oh wow, I won't be thinking about getting into the New York Times or writing a book. I'm going to be thinking about this moment here. I'll be thinking about the 14-hour day that Beth put me through yesterday. But just the connection, and for me, it's so great. I've been to Rapid City 4 times, but this is the only time that I felt like I was home. And then I go and I'm like, I truly made a friend, because it was like, I met a whole bunch of business owners. We're walking around. I was following her through Safeway. So I truly got the non-touristy experience in this. And then that is part of the connection. And I said, I'm not getting paid a lot, but I've got paid more than I had imagined. I made a connection that I felt was for life, whether you want that or not, Beth. And so part of that too, it's like when you're looking at the dimensions, you're going, my happy social, the connections that I've made, the people that I've met along the way, has been so powerful for me. And through all the messiness, the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur, and when you read the book or you listen to my TED Talk or you go through all these things, you're going to see, wow, Jason was really messy. And I tell everyone, I was a high-functioning, high-achieving mess. I was really messy, both financially and other aspects of life. And that's why I dove into, how can I improve myself? What lessons can I learn? How can I connect myself with people who I want to aspire to be? And I've met millionaires and billionaires who are like, I definitely do not want to be them, because they were unhappy. I wanted the people who were good with money and were happy. And that's what drove me to understanding, or wanting to understand, what is happiness? How can we bring more joy, more happiness into our lives? And I realized one of the key things were the wellness dimensions. So again, I can talk forever, but I do want to thank you all. I want to respect your time, and I want the opportunity to answer any questions that you might have, and also just to kind of connect and things like that as well. I do have a few books available here if you'd like to purchase, but they're also available at Mitzi's. And I discovered my publisher today, just for today, if you're a Kindle reader, they worked with Amazon to give it at $2.99. So as you can tell, authors do not make money. just FYI, if you're wondering, authors do not make money. We make money on other things. And for those of you entrepreneurs wondering, and I just want to put this aside because we did a talk on book publishing on Tuesday. For those of you, how many of you have thought about wanting to write a book? It's like, I have a book. Okay, well, I'm sure many of you have, yes, don't be ashamed. All of us have a story, and I always look at it this way. The one way we can leave our legacy behind is to put our story in between the covers of a book. For people to understand our thoughts, our feelings, to understand our journey. And the great thing is that we can self-publish. And I know many of my friends who've self-published on Amazon, and they're making a killing because all the profits go back to them. See, they're better business owners than I am. So those are one of the key things, and we talk specifically with the marketing group on that. But again, they're available. I'm here, so let's continue to connect, and feel free to follow me on social media. I'm active on Instagram and on Twitter, but I do preface on Instagram, you will only see travel pics, my dog, yoga, breathwork, and some money thrown in between those things. Yeah, you'll learn a lot. I talk about the 9 paths, and so I became a certified yoga teacher and breathwork specialist. So that's really big. And many of you, if you follow like the tech world, a lot of them do yoga and breathwork, and I still belong to it. And then one of the really interesting thing is that when I moved from Jersey to California, they relocated me the first day at work. My boss asked me to go into our office, and she says, bring a change of clothes, tomorrow we're doing yoga. And I'm like, California, here's a Jersey guy going in, I'm like, I gotta do yoga. So trying to, having to want to impress my new CEO and gonna have to do yoga, it's like, this is gonna be really strange. And then so we go on campus, because we had one of those campuses where there was yoga, there's food and all, like walking trails, just typical Silicon Valley, because it was on Menlo Park. And so there we're doing yoga, and I just didn't know anyone in the area. So then I got to know the yoga teacher, who also happened to work in the company, and that's how we connected. And I didn't know, just being exposed to yoga, just forcing myself in that social world was introducing me to different concepts. And then I learned, and during the pandemic, I was in quarantine. We were all in quarantine, and so like, what do I do with my time? And so I was like, I've always wanted to do yoga teacher certification, and there was one that was in Bali that ended up being online, and I decided to do the online version, and it was just an amazing experience. And then I got introduced to breathwork, and I finally realized what yoga was. It's movement to truly change our mood, and we change our mood through the breath. And so I can look at people and I can see how they're doing based on how they're breathing. So if someone's breathing really fast, I know that they might be going through something. Someone's breathing really slow, they're in calm, collected state, and that is okay. And then part as an entrepreneur, I want you to pay attention to when you're, how you're breathing, when you're talking to people or you're thinking about your business, because that is a physical reaction, a sensation, and you want to lean into that. It's a game changer for me. And so I've been on national TV, and I've gotten anchors to do yoga with me. So we'll say, breathe in wealth, breathe out debt. And they're like, oh, that's okay. And so just however to make things accessible, because I'm a big believer movement is key. Breath work is truly powerful. And I wrote a book on money, but it really is a book on happiness that happens to talk about money. And as Beth mentioned, it's 60 pages because money is very simple. What trips us up is our relationship with money, our money mindset, our emotions, the marketing. That's what trips us up. But at the base core of it, it's simple, right? Don't spend more than you earn. Invest for the future, and things like that. It is really basic. And so I want you, and again, this is my second book. My first book was YOLO. And that was a book on time that talks about money. There's a book on happiness that talks about money. My publisher wants me to write a third book, and they're like, we want you to write a tactical book. And I mentioned yesterday, I want to write a book on love and money. And so who knows, we'll see. But if you asked me 10 years ago, would I be doing what I'm doing now? I would say I would not have had thought this ever. I was hopeful. And I was aspiring to be much more than where I was 10 years ago, even though I had just quit my job, backpacked around the world. I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do in my life, but just connecting with people, being exposed to the things I was exposed to, opened new doors. And to be traditionally published, to get onto the New York Times, to get paid in big stages to speak, if you ask 10-year-old Jason, is this the life you imagined? 10-year-old Jason would say, I thought you'd be out in space being an astronaut, but I wouldn't change it. It's been such a great path, and I hope for all of you who are going through where you're going through, I just want you to know it's not about where you start, it's where you end up. And it's not even about where you end up, it's where you go from here on end. And it never stops as long as you continue to move forward and onward and continue to connect with like-minded people and expanding. So with that, I'll wrap it over. Oh, so working in the branches, so I said, like, I didn't have, so I originally went to school for filmmaking. My parents told me there's no way you're gonna make money, and the fact that I was delayed school for an entire year because I couldn't afford it, people were telling me, creatives don't make money. You gotta go into something else, and I was working at the airport, again, cleaning toilets, serving drinks, and then I started meeting the manager saying, you wanna make money, you gotta go into business. So I went to the business school, and they say, oh, you want to make money? You can't be a general business person. You got to focus on finance. I struggled on finance, and then so eventually I graduated, got into banking. I started as a teller, worked my way up to the back office as VP, and then in between that, I was a branch manager at a credit union. And I'm in the branch manager, opening accounts, trying to resolve member issues, customers' issues, and I became friends with two members. They were an elderly couple. They were in their 70s. They would come in and they would rate shop. It's like, what's the rate today? And then we became friends. They invited me over to their house, and I'm like, okay. People invite me over. I'm like, okay, I'll go eat free food, and we became friends. And years later, you're talking about 10 years later, or actually 5 years later, I post on Facebook that I wanted to self-publish, because when I went on the road to financial wellness, I wanted to go on TV. And I had anchors and journalists telling me, well, no one cares about financial education. It's not sexy, it's not fun. We can't really talk about it on air. But if you had a book, we can hold the book on air. And so I'm hard-headed, right? All of you are like, yeah, I'm gonna do something. I'm like, I'm hard-headed, I'm gonna self-publish. I'm gonna figure out Amazon, I'll self-publish. So I shared this story on Facebook, and my friend saw this post, sent me a message on Messenger, and said, I didn't know you wanted to be an author. And it's like, my son works at Wiley. And so I didn't think anything of it. Then 2 weeks later, I get an email, and this email had 8 threads. It was passed on from one manager to another around the world, ended up in the inbox of my editor, who read it, sent me an email and said, we're interested in learning more. Can we set up a meeting? And again, being the entrepreneurial mindset, I said, I'd like to meet in person. You're just in Hoboken. I'll take the train ride. So got up to Hoboken. We had lunch, had a great conversation. By the time I got home that afternoon, I had a book deal. So I didn't even need to create a book proposal. Those book proposals are 60, 80 pages long. And that's when I learned about the power of connections and just seeing people as they are, and not knowing that me just befriending people who are decades older than me was going to open the door to being published and then changing the trajectory of my life. And so we never know who we meet. And part of that too, like the beauty of social media is that we don't have to connect all the time, but we can connect and use that as an opportunity to kind of foster and nourish those connections. And I talk about that in Happy Social. And so we're friends, and she constantly, her husband passed away, but she constantly messages me and things like that. And it's great and it's sweet. And when I talk about generational friends, like having younger friends and having older friends, and just how enriching that truly can be. Because sometimes we need people that are steps ahead of us, and sometimes we need people who are a few steps behind us, because we need to be the mentor and the mentee. And that has helped and served me along in my journey.
We have 10 minutes left, so
Yeah. Yes.
How did you improve your writing skills to get to author?
AI. Part of it too, this is interesting, right? So when I was in 10th grade, I went to school in Elizabeth High School. 10th grade, my very eccentric English teacher said I was the worst writer. She actually fell on the floor, and you could see, and she put herself into fetal position, started crying. And so that was my first experience, and I thought to myself, I must be a horrible writer. And then I realized that we all have different writing styles, and I just didn't fit her writing style. And for me, I got better, or I formulated my writing style by just writing. So for those of you who've been thinking about, I want to write, it is true. Just sit down and write. And it's not going to be the thing you publish, but what happens, it refines your voice. And then you start seeing, you're seeing your voice in the pages that you've written. And so for me, it was just constantly writing. So when I got back from my backpacking trip, my friends and family were asking me, like, what are you going to do with your life? And I'm like, I don't know. And I only have a few more months left before my savings are gone. And I started writing. I started telling them I have this, like the experiences I had overseas. And also I started talking to them about the idea of empowering a generation on this topic of financial wellness, and the blog just blew up, and people began sharing it. And then what's interesting is that when I read those blogs from like 10 years ago, I cringe. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so bad. But it's also fun to see because it captures that moment, it captures those thoughts. And for anyone aspiring to write, it's like don't be too hard on yourself. Be kind to yourself, and because we all grow. I'm sure when I read YOLO, it's a different. I'm a different person from when I wrote it in 2015, and so the voices do change, but ultimately, it remains the same. There's some differences. So the key really is just writing. Yeah.
You still blog every day? Or
No, I do not.
schedule?
Yeah, I do not blog every single day, but I do like on jasonvitug.com. What I focus on is really life, and so you get different musings and things like that. And so why I love road tripping is that just the open road just allows my mind to just start thinking of stuff, making new connections, and I just start writing. But Frugal started as a blog and then turned into a financial marketplace. And if you're thinking about like, okay, what other business? So Frugal became a financial marketplace, and I've worked with really big brands. So I've worked with USAA, Chime, SoFi, a number of these fintech organizations on content creation, on member engagement, and things like that. And so and that was the thing too, my experience in Silicon Valley and no longer being there, but my connections gave me credibility to work with a lot of these brands, helping them elevate their messaging in addition to their education piece of it. And that's why when I look back, because it's hard to see the connections, right? When you're in it, it's only further down the timeline where things starts connecting. And so, yeah, it's been a wild journey as a person who wasn't writing and then start blogging to becoming a published author and working on a current memoir and a screenplay. So it's just, as I mentioned, it's just been a really wild ride, and envisioning in my mind, again, working in corporate America and then seeing in a couple of years that my story will be on the big screen. And it's remarkable and interesting, and the timing and stuff like that. So sometimes I want things now, and then sometimes it's just time has to pass a little bit in order for me to catch up to whatever. Yes.
What's your favorite story from your backpacking trip?
So this is a good one. So when I left my job, my boss actually wanted me to stay. So I was having meetings with my board of directors and my CEO, and I quit, but I stayed for 6 months. It wasn't like I quit and I left. They kept enticing me to stay. And then so we had a meeting around Christmas and the holidays. I was in Jersey visiting my family, and they're all out in California. And there was a meeting, and I just felt my body tense up, and I was having an anxiety attack. I couldn't breathe. And it was a simple question about something in marketing, and I just felt something was off. And then so after the holidays, I called up my boss and I said, this is it, I'm leaving. She was like, oh, Jason, you've been saying this all the time. We know you'll be back. I'm like, no, I bought my ticket. I'm at the airport with my backpack. This is actually happening. And so I flew out to the Philippines. My mother's Filipino, so I go to the Philippines, and I land in Manila, and then I see poverty I've never seen before, and it just it impacted me. And then I started asking myself, what's wrong with me? I turned down a really great job. I turned down good money. Imagine the money that I would make and the support and help that I could do. And so while I was in Manila, I was just having all these thoughts. Then I was going to another island, Cebu, to go see a lot of the other ancient Spanish colonial architecture. So flying to Cebu, and I'm sitting in the belly of the aircraft. It's a short flight, and I was having a crisis. So I was holding on. I think my knuckles were bare white, and I was like, God, did I make the right decision? And and in my mind, I'm going, I'm gonna call my boss, and I'm gonna tell her I made a mistake, and they told me I can come back, and I'm gonna get back to work, and this is gonna be fun. I landed in Cebu. I did all the touristy stuff. I started filming everything. Then all of a sudden, as I'm filming the oldest structure, I started hearing people screaming and yelling. And then motorcycles, motorbikes, and cars just started zipping by. And I'm from Jersey, so at that moment, I think it's a riot. So I go on the side and I'm like, what is going on? And then someone stops, looks at me and says, run tidal wave. At that moment, I started thinking about the things that happened in Bali and Indonesia, that tidal wave that killed hundreds of thousands of people. And I'm in an island. Like, where do I go? Where do I turn? And so I just start running. And at that moment, I really thought I was scared that I was going to lose my life. And so I started filming it. And here I am, like, filming and running. And I actually left a message to my family. I'm like, perhaps they'll find this video if something were to happen to me. And so obviously I'm here. I'm not an apparition. I'm not a ghost, and everything's fine. But I posted that video on YouTube, and the Filipino national TV saw it on YouTube, and they decided to use it. And then as I'm sitting in the bar, my face is plastered on TV, and they go, American caught in tsunami. And then here I am with this video, and you see me running over, and it's on YouTube, so you could see it. And then so that was a point in that early on in the journey. I had this plan of taking a break, seeing a few things, and that was that moment that I'm like, wow, anything and everything can happen. And I was truly scared for my life and glad that I'm safe. And I felt the earthquake, the aftershocks, and I was in the pool, and then I had this thought, and I was sharing with them that I literally had to be shaken to get back into the path that I was doubting. And from that point on, I threw my plans away and I let the wind carry me. And it was just a really interesting moment for me because it happened early on, that self-doubt, and my question was answered. And then eventually there's other really fun things, like I became royalty. They messed up my visa going from one country, from Singapore to Siam, and trying to check in. They're like, Count Jason Vitug? And I was like, yes. It's like, but your passport doesn't say Count. And I'm like, yes, it's Jason Vitug, but all my visas and my tickets said Count. And so I'm there explaining to the ticket agent and then the supervisor and to the officials, like, doctor, like, mister, like, this is, and they're like Prince, like, and they're like, oh, okay. So it was like the strangest thing. And then that was me learning too. In Southeast Asia, there are royal families in smaller enclaves. And so at that point, they're like, oh, he's Asian. And so they're like, oh, maybe there's truth on it. And they let me board the plane. And then from that point on, my friends call me, I think it's from like some old movie, like Count the Money. And that was like one of the fun experiences. But there were some other terrifying moments on there. But again, those experiences have been like truly amazing, and I carry them with me. And travel for me is like one of the things that expands our minds. Again, new data inputs, new connections, new conversations that allows us to see the things that we haven't seen because of the new connections. Thank you. Okay, I think we're at the top of the hour, right? Well, I want to thank Elevate Rapid City for having me here. I want to thank Beth for having me for the past 3 days. Again, this really touches my heart to be able to connect with so many people. And I can't wait to follow your stories. I can't wait to see what you continue to do. And last time I was here was 2016, and it has changed. So I'm sure it'll continue to change. But I was telling Beth, like, I don't want to be a stranger. I love this area, but not the snow that I've been told. So thank you.